Welcome back. I'm Greg Livingston, and this is the second in the Commune's series of 3 podcasts on Gamescape 2015, a summer indie developer showcase from Baltimore, Maryland. This time, you'll hear 2 interviews with dev teams, where we flesh out both game design and development team dynamics. First up, we've got Stomp, where players control a monster, or to be precise, a kaiju, from a scrolling overhead view. Their goal is to demolish as many buildings as possible while avoiding gas stations and collecting power-ups. It's under development by
Joel Garcia, producer of Stomp.
Nathan McLean, the programmer.
Hi, I'm Leah Jennings. I am asset artist and concept artist.
All right, glad to meet you all. Stomp is a fun little game where you get to create a lot of havoc, a lot of destruction, always fun. But it's also centered around gaining high scores, crushing as much stuff as possible without blowing up. So I wanted to ask, how can players improve in Stomp? Which is to say, what aspects of Stomp can the player influence and what else is beyond their control?
Alright, so players can influence the movements of their monsters. Because this game is centered around tracking players as they walk, if they travel long distances quickly in the game space within the constraints of the Kinect's view, they'll be able to destroy more buildings and, of course, gain higher scores. Now, they can also impact their reflexes through each playthrough. So, of course, if they practice, they become quicker. One element that they have no control over is the randomly generated buildings. Nathan can definitely cover this topic.
Yeah, so Nathan, what is the method behind the buildings generation? Is it purely random, or is there like a sense of level design?
Well, there is a sense of level design. What I did in designing the basics of Stomp was to create prefabs in Unity that are just placeholders. So any of our designers can then place a placeholder anywhere on the map. And once those placeholders are set, there's a script that runs through that randomly generates a different building tile each time the game is run. We use a similar one for generating the towers and the gas stations. So that randomly generates between the gas station and the towers that you collect to become a mega kaiju.
And there must be some algorithm behind the scenes so that certain types of buildings appear in appropriate proportion?
Correct. Well, right now the algorithm goes through about 10 different buildings as well as 2 park tiles. We're hoping to expand that at some point in time and kind of use different randomization on where they are within the scene. But for right now, just as a proof of concept, it's going through every type of building we have for that level. And then on the next level, we're using a different set of buildings, but still it's 10 with the 2 others. And that's what it goes through to generate each building tile.
Okay. So you mentioned that there are different types of building tiles per level. Do they behave any differently? Would the player come up with different strategies based on the level?
We're still working on the logic for that and how to present to a player almost like a shopping list of buildings that you need to collect for different things to happen. And that would go into our future designs for different power-ups for the kaiju, different types of, right now it's just the mega, but also we plan on possibly adding beams or different types of additions that you can get for limited time with the kaiju if you collect certain building types. And of course that list on the side will change to show which buildings you need to collect and how many you need to collect to get a certain power-up.
Okay. And Joel, you had mentioned that players could get better at the game by improving their reflexes. I was wondering how much variety you have seen in player performance based off of just their ability to get around the real-world space.
At Gamescape alone, we saw plenty of variety. I mean, we had kids come in, hopping back and forth between the game space. And then, every now and then we had, some adults try out the game. And some of them would get it, and then like you had a couple who were like really, really cautious, like walking bit by bit just to see what their kaiju would do on screen. And then we had like a really, really cool playthrough done by a guy on crutches. He moved slowly, but he was able to like cover a lot of ground on each map.
Has there been one type of movement that has been more successful than others, or does everyone generally find their own way to success?
What do you think, guys?
Well, what I noticed, because this was really one of our first public trials, so before this, it's just been us testing the game, and of course, we knew the limitations of the game, so we would move completely throughout it. I know we noticed that some users would get right into it and move around the whole space, but others would just kind of stand there and not know what was going on. So we're thinking about building a tutorial type stage that kind of gets people used to moving around in that actual space and showing that it actually moves your character around the virtual space. But I think we got a lot of good data this past weekend on how users play.
Nice.
No
yeah.
doubt.
It's kind of interesting how people actually need to figure out how to move in this space. And one thing we didn't realize, maybe since we're used to playing it, is that you kind of need to teach someone how to move in this space, because people are usually start off maybe waving their arms or stomping their feet up and down, and we have to physically show them you can walk to side or forward and backward. And then they're kind of slowly, the light bulb turns on and they figure out what they are allowed to do in the game. And then maybe how to strategize better, or like how to move more successfully. And I think there's some variety to the types of patterns that people can use to play, but there's a lot of similarity. Basically, you want to have full range of motion, and I think we do want to increase the sensitivity so you can control the monster a little bit more and not get lost on screen. But yeah, a lot of good data over the weekend, a lot of different people doing it different ways.
Nice. Yeah, it does seem like it would be tricky conveying the mapping of real-world space to game space. You know, we kind of just understand how a joystick works. That's been around for several decades now, but using your body as a game controller is not something we are terribly used to.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think it's something that definitely takes a little getting used to. The people I saw using it the most, and the most like the way we envisioned, were the younger kids, because they would just, once they realized that they were being followed around on the screen by this monster, they just took to it and were moving everywhere, almost running into people that weren't in the game.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You guys remember these three kids? One about, I guess, like 7 or 8, and then his 2 younger siblings. The oldest brother stood in the center of the game space, and the youngest siblings just ran around him like a merry-go-round. I believe they achieved 2,800 points through their playthrough, so they definitely grasped the concept of coverage and moving quickly around the map.
I was also curious, among your development staff, who has been the most successful playing the game?
Playing the game. Oh, okay.
Who's gotten the high score?
What you meant. Okay. Oh.
I don't know that I've actually played for a high score before, just to make sure that everything was working. It's always been a matter of making sure that the kaiju showed up on screen, the buildings, when they were destroyed, that they actually calculated upright, and then that the mega was actually working correctly. I don't know, did either of you all ever play in testing for a high score?
Yeah, I know I beat Hero's score on
Nice.
Saturday.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy was he's a recent person that joined our team. He may be helping us out with like sound effects and music and such, and even voiceovers. But he gained a total of about 2,900 points, I believe, through one playthrough of both levels.
All right.
Wow.
I was also continuing about the development staff. I was wondering, how much do team roles bleed together? Do you often have the programmer giving opinion on the graphics, or the graphics person giving opinion about how the game plays?
I think Leia would be good at covering this portion of the conversation.
I think probably Joel is the most interdisciplinary member on the team right now, because since he's the producer, he sort of has his hands in each of the things that we're doing, and also has a wide variety of skills that he's been able to help with sort of filling in wherever we need. So he's helped me with the animation, and he's done the level design, and I believe he's also familiar with the coding. Whereas the artists are more segregated, where we sort of have our own email threads, and we just focus on the art stuff, and the programmers mostly focus on the programming, especially since now that we have 3-4 artists, we try to not bother the programmers too much. So we'll have some kind of like separate art meetings, and then maybe for a big meeting, we'll all get together and just sort of check with everyone, like, does this look good to you? That makes sense.
Okay. So
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe the artists do a lot of talking amongst each other, and the programmers might talk amongst each other a whole lot, but there's not a lot of discussion between the two groups, aside from when things come together.
Well, I mean, I know that I talk with Leah and Joelle a lot when it comes to things that I'm noticing during the design or during the programming process that would help visually express what we have going on. Wouldn't say it's a huge dialogue, but definitely just the conversation of, what looks good with the buildings, how they're just, what we need as far as them looking, how they look intact, and then how they look when they're destroyed. I know we all went through a bit while we were getting the kaiju actually built, and then knowing that, we're taking those gifts and taking those images and putting them actually into Unity. There's a small process in that, and if there's something a little bit off, I know we talk about that back and forth as well. I mean, it's just because it's so seamless, especially with Joel having his hands kind of in both areas, it usually goes so smoothly that we don't even notice it. But definitely with the things that Joel does as far as animation and prototyping, it's been a huge help, and that's helped us to be able to isolate ourselves within programming or within art to be able to maximize what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's a kind of a combination where everyone has their own roles, but we're also constantly looking to each other for feedback, because we really have to be like a cohesive unit. Because if I make a piece of art that can't be programmed, then it's useless. So Joel has been trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page as much as possible, and that's been really good.
All right, so I do completely agree with both Nathan and Leia. We do have our times where we're segregated and we work individually on our own tasks, but then we come together and put together a playable build so that we can make sure it's refined from all ends. And then we also give each other feedback when necessary. I recall there were times where Jillian Walker, the artist behind our logo, basically emailed everyone on our team to see what they thought about the logo. Throughout a couple of weeks, she got a lot of feedback from the team, both programmers and artists, and she formed this logo that I feel definitely captures the essence of the game, breaking stuff. And then there's this other example where Leia personally went over to Nathan to see whether or not he felt that the building sprites that she was making would fit into the game. He was excited to tell her yes. They're bright and colorful. They're simple in detail, yet they're distinct enough for players to recognize. He also went ahead and said that they would also captivate the audience that he felt we could go for. Kids, primarily. So I feel as though we work together in such a way where we do create like this intricate web that is transparent sometimes, but it isn't only transparent because of like the fact that I am jumping in between different areas of the game, but it's also transparent because everyone's willing to communicate and also work together and be flexible with each other. The Mega is a primary example of that. That was both the idea of an artist and a programmer. I'll give the programming portion to Nathan, since he had originally conceived that we should like create like this mechanic of a Mega by just increasing the size of the kaiju. And then Leia, I'll give her the credit mainly because she, for the art end of it, since she was the one that thought that it would be good to give players a visual indicator by providing a kaiju that changes visually with more detail and a different animation. So I really have to thank the team as a whole: Jillian Walker, Nathan McLean, Leia Jennings, Hiroshi Butler, and every one of the new members that have recently joined. I feel like you guys work together very well, mainly because you guys communicate, and also because you're willing to be flexible with one another. Thank you.
Nice. It sounds like you're a well-oiled machine.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Over the world.
So one last question, just more of a conceptual question I wanted to run by each of you individually. Joel, could you tell me, when it comes to game design, which is more important? The game itself, the intention of the developer, or the experience of the player?
I feel to a certain extent that each of those things is important. There are games out there that are made specifically for players to have fun with and do whatever they want with, like, Saints Row, for example, has like this gigantic world with so many different means of interaction. And even something like Kirby 64, a platformer that allows you to mix and match power-ups. I feel like those focus in on user experience. And then, you have other games that are about getting some sort of concept across. Like, for example, Papers, Please. Papers, Please, I feel, is a commentary on immigration. I personally, as a game designer, would love to mesh with those two things. I would like to create games that focused on passing along theories and concepts that I have and any commentary I have about this world. And also, I'd like to create games that are based on the user experience. So if I were to set up some sort of hierarchy, maybe, for example, depending on what I am aiming to do, what my concept is, perhaps I would make a game that is 25% my concept and theory, and then 75% gameplay and fun.
So it's that idea of a clean end-to-end communication where the player successfully receives the thought imparted by the designer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That, and of course, they also have fun. There has to be a point where, either they're having a really good time, or the design is set up in such a way where, I guess they walk away with something else. I know that not all games have to be fun. Not all of them have to be happy. There can be sad moments. There can be moments that get you angry. I mean, BioShock Infinite is an example where, that gameplay focuses on tense moments, where it isn't really about happiness if you focus in on, the gameplay itself, the action-oriented shooting here and there, FPS stuff.
I think...
But,
you might say
yes.
Engaging rather than fun.
Yes, that would be a better term to use, actually.
Okay. Nathan, when it comes to game design, which is more important, the game itself, the developer, or the experience of the player?
The experience of the player, for me, is always at the top of my list. Wanting to make sure that the player is engaged, as you said earlier, but also making sure that we're taking care of the players' needs as we're designing the game. Because first of all, without having a player, you don't have a game. And I know that just this past weekend had opened my eyes to a lot of areas that we can focus on to tighten up the game and get a better feel for what players want out of the game, not necessarily just what we want. Now, design-wise, I also feel like Joel does as far as giving the players a certain feel when they're playing the game. So, like, while a lot of the ideas I definitely took to heart this weekend, there's some things that just are outside of the realm of what we wanted to do with this game, while others are definitely things that we're looking at including in the game so that we can kind of make it something that the players feel is theirs and they're in the game and they're enjoying the world versus a strict, this is our experience, this is what we want you to do, and, don't deviate from that. I definitely like the concept of games like Minecraft and Grand Theft Auto, where the game is designed to let the player use their imagination in how they play. Now, this game doesn't completely lend itself to that, but it does give us some area to play with as far as adding different difficulty levels and different things to get players up and moving about and just enjoying the game in general.
Sure. You might even say, the Kinect itself is a method of expression that allows, for a more individual touch than a joystick could.
Yes.
So it sounds like, as a designer, you're concerned with creating expressive experiences, a world in which a player could gain a sense of identity, or at least display a sense of identity.
Yes. That's one of the things I found exciting about this past weekend is seeing how people got into it. And the whole, look at me, I'm moving around and it's doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. And Leah, when it comes to game design, which is more important, the game itself, the developer, or the player?
So I think I'm going to answer this on how I feel about design in general, maybe not necessarily for this game, but I think that the experience of the game is really the residue or the artifact of the game. That's the only way the game really exists, is through being experienced by the player. But as a designer, you can't specifically engineer an experience. All you can do is sort of provide the substrate or the playground in which someone else can generate their own experience. You can kind of guide someone into the type of experience, but that's going to be really up to the individual. And I think at the same time, it can't exist without the designer. And I think coming from the background of an artist, like a fine artist, we really value having a very specific, personal kind of nugget of an idea or a feeling or an experience, and then expressing that into whatever you're doing. And it's not necessarily even can be defined by specific mechanics, like is it open world or is it very scripted? It's really just a feeling that you impart on the people that are playing it. So I think it's really kind of ephemeral for me, and it's a matter of trial and error. Yeah. That's my very complicated answer to that question.
Yeah, gameplay has always struck me as one of those abstract things like music where, you read a book or look at a picture, you can see these are people doing things. But music and gameplay are kind of experienced on a more, like you said, ephemeral or maybe in some kind of deeper level.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Speak with you, yeah.
Look out for Stomp at the Boston Festival of Indie Games, and you can catch him on Facebook at facebook.com/stompgame. Our interview touched on discussions the Commune had while playing Bal Cube. The team covered what influences the range of what the player can control, including motion control and procedural generation. They also explained gameplay from the perspective of seeking a high score. We had similar discussions about Bal Cube in episodes 41 and 42. In HueBots, players slide robots across the screen to hit colored switches and reach the exit. However, once a robot starts sliding in one direction, it won't stop until it hits a wall. Here, the HueBots development team considers the role of planning in gameplay, as well as how the variety of elements influences that planning. How do players learn the function of elements, and how do they apply that knowledge? Let's get our answers from...
Hi, I'm Michael Young. I'm the project lead.
I'm Erica Schumacher, and I am the art lead.
And I'm Ted Cordell, and I'm the game designer and lead programmer.
All right, nice to meet you all. And
Nice to meet you too.
we are here to discuss HueBots, a puzzle game for, I believe, Android. Are there any other devices it's out on?
Oh, there's a lot. There's Android. We're playing on iOS, Windows Phone, PC, Mac. Both those have demos up. Possibly Linux, now that Unity is starting to support Linux publishing a lot more with version 5.
Okay. Unity's actually really powerful that way, isn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing like how fast they've progressed over like a couple of years, but I'm not complaining.
So first I wanted to get at progression in HueBots, and I wanted to ask, how did you ramp up the complexity of stages in HueBots from one stage to the next?
Oh, sure. Chad would be really good at handling that since he was designed most of the game's game design. Chad?
Yeah, so I like to think about the entire game as just one big, long thought process. So you kind of start out, you don't know anything, so the levels are kind of designed around leading people's expectations towards, rather having them act on instinct. So we make the things we want them to click on, like kind of we point them out and kind of make them click on it so they know how to like build robots, how to move them around, the special quirks of them moving around. So the beginning levels just kind of teach you those things without actually explaining them. And then as they start to turn into actual puzzles, it kind of messes with those expectations more. So it'll kind of lead you to do one thing, and then the puzzle after it will kind of take what you learned from that previous puzzle and either put a twist on it or kind of mess with your expectations and force you to think more outside the box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I guess just for clarification, is that to say in those introductory puzzles, does the player have any chance for failure in those opening puzzles?
There really isn't any failure in the game. I mean, really the only failure state is giving up, because the game's all about just solving those puzzles. There's no losing. You can undo moves, you can restart the level and try again if you want. You have no limit on lives. It's all just about thinking it through. So I guess the failure state would just be, if you don't figure it out, then you might give up. That's really all it is. Okay.
So it sounds like consequences are pretty light for each individual move you make. Are you able, right. You're able to undo back all the way back to the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, if you make a move you don't want, you can just undo that move, because the levels do get pretty complex, so if you just accidentally put a block in the wrong place or something, we don't make you restart the entire level.
Okay. So it sounded like you also introduced patterns and then sort of played on those patterns and built them into puzzles by reversing what players had come to expect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of goes off what I was saying before about kind of using their expectations against them. So they might solve it one way and then we'll change the color. We'll change the color of one block or something. And they'll immediately assume, since the puzzle looks so similar, they'll try to solve it the same way, and that doesn't work. But then they'll be so stuck in that mindset of solving that first puzzle, it it really forces them to like kind of expand their mind and think outside of the box, and that makes it really satisfying to play when they finally, solve that twist.
So would you count those as red herrings or tricks, like trying to throw the player off?
I guess a little bit.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, how many steps ahead do players typically plan? You've demoed this game at Gamescape. I was wondering if any of you had noticed how players tend to play.
Everybody seems to have a different play style. I mean, the game is definitely designed so that you can think through the entire puzzle before actually executing any of the moves. But some people do like to experiment and kind of go step by step and see what they can figure out. Sometimes that, just the way the level is designed, that doesn't quite work out because they back themselves into a corner. It kind of requires some planning, but it's definitely, either way is definitely a valid way of playing the game.
So when you say it's designed so that you can plan it out from the beginning, how is that?
It's just, how to explain it?
So,
I mean, each stage only has one or two solutions, so there's a way to get there. It's just up to the players to figure it out. So people can plan their way to that path to the goal, but they can also figure it out by just like messing around, being like, "Oh, I wonder what this does," and then they'll figure it out.
Yeah, every action in the game is predetermined. Like there's nothing random about the game. Every move you make, every specific move will have the same specific outcome. So you can theoretically sit there and like plan out the moves before you actually execute them. So the game's definitely a lot more about the thought process than actually executing it in game.
So it's almost like you see the puzzle on screen and you can look at each element and imagine this is what's going to happen when I, hit the wall here. This is what my option will be, so on and so forth.
Right.
Okay.
And but yeah, there is also the more experimental way of playing, which is actually more helpful in like the tutorial stages where you don't know the outcomes yet because you haven't learned the game mechanics. So that's a lot more of a step-by-step process than thinking out the entire thing straight through.
Okay.
So once you get an idea of what each element in the game does, it becomes a lot easier to see the whole picture of the level and figure out, how do I get to point A to point B to point C to the goal?
Right.
So there's like a network of complexities based on each of the different elements.
Yeah, pretty much.
What are... I think I played all the way through the demo, and I saw being able to place blocks and being able to place other robots. What are some of the other elements that players will encounter as the game develops?
So there are basically these buttons that if a bot that matches its color stands on it, then there's special blocks. Like the buttons will have a number on it, and any block with that number on it will deactivate. So it's kind of like a pressure plate door system kind of thing where you stand a bot on it and it'll deactivate the door. But the color matching thing plays into account because the blocks have colors and the buttons have colors too. There are also push blocks that you'll encounter. So if a bot runs into the push block, then the block will push. But if the bot doesn't match the push block's color, it'll just stay there and act like a normal wall. And then there's also, closer to the end of the game, there are color mixers. So you kind of send you'll send in like a red bot and an orange bot, and it'll combine them or a red bot and a yellow bot, sorry, and it'll combine them into an orange bot. So it kind of like plays into that, the color mixing you learned in like first grade.
Yeah, it sounds like the aesthetics do a large part of communicating what you can do with puzzles.
Right.
Just a more general question about game development. Do team roles tend to bleed together, or do you generally find that you're more focused on your individual task without really commenting on what the game as a whole is becoming?
Do you mind if I handle this, Chad?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
From my perspective as like managing, because like when I came on, I was actually more as like a really great programmer. I was known like a star mad scientist kind of programmer. And at first, like it seemed like that was what I was going to do, just code. But it turned out that each of us had like really specialized really well. Like knew everything about how the character should move, about how the block should behave, and he just understood the gameplay very naturally. And so he was able to work on the gameplay really well and fit into that. Erica was really amazing with the art, but of course, since we don't really have like a program to mix programming directly with art, she didn't know much about coding. So she just handled just mainly the visual design. And she might ask him like, oh, how should this bot move to inform how she would do the tile designs, or how she would do transitions between different animation states. And same thing with Jasmine, because Jasmine had to actually do the actual frame-by-frame animations on top of that. So each of us had like a niche that we would focus on. But at the same time, each of us had to then communicate back with each other and ask, oh, how are you doing this? Why do you want to have this element executed in this fashion? So we were doing it, each of our individual tasks, by like, we had our own, we basically owned our feature, but we had to do it with the information of the rest of the project behind it. We had to like, each of our assistants had to be very much informed by what each of the other specialists was doing.
And if I can say something too, I think some of the jobs have bleeded. Like, I've personally worked on a lot of things. Like, I've done the programming and the design and the music and sound, and I've also helped kind of animate a few things, like a few of the simpler things, like the backgrounds, which people don't really notice, but it's good. But I feel like that's sort of a byproduct of having such a small team, since we only really have 4 people. On a bigger team, the roles would probably be a lot more concrete, but I mean, since there are only 4 of us, then usually we just kind of try to get done what needs to be done, given we have the skill set to do so.
With a 4-person team, it's really easy to communicate and say, I need this image to have this size so that it communicates this hitbox or something like that.
Sort of, yes. It's very organic. Like, after a while, you don't even think to ask those questions. Like, you just know, like, oh, we operate at this DPI, so I need this type of image size. We use we're tile based, so we should have square aspect ratio for the textures. And so, like, eventually, like, after a couple months in, like, it wasn't like things like specific details like that. Sometimes it was more like oh, like, which colors do you want me to pick? Do you want it to be like more this kind of purple, that kind of purple? They became like very qualitative, and the quantitative stuff, like, they come up like once, then we'd get it. Like, we'd all collaborate together and figure like, oh, so this is the type, and like, this is the number, this is the value that we need. Then it would just never come up again, because like, we basically knew. I think if we had like more people on the team, like, we would need a lot more documentation. But like, yeah, this was like the sweet spot where people could just remember the details that they needed to know. And I think we have some documentation, right, Dad? But
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but like, not much. Like, just like checkboxes, like, oh, what feature do you need? And otherwise, like, it was very instinctive. It was very interesting.
Okay. I was also curious, so who's mainly responsible for the actual puzzle design, and who's responsible for the concept of the elements? And I was wondering if that was more or less the same role.
With that
Tad
so
all
over the place.
That was mostly me. Basically, we're part of a game development club at our school at UMBC, and every year that game development club has kind of like a session where everyone pitches ideas for games they want to make, and then the following weekend we have a 48-hour game jam where we basically prototype our ideas that we pitch as fast as we can, and then present them to the club at the end and see what people like, and they vote on what they want to keep doing. But basically, HueBots was part of that process, so I had the original idea, and I pitched it to the club, and originally it was just me and Jasmine, who's not here, working on the original prototype and the game jam. So that's when I came up with a lot of like the gameplay mechanic ideas and some of the level design, and it was when I really got to start thinking about the game and like how the different game mechanics could play together and do interesting things. Then we kind of formed our full team later on after that.
He was a beast during that game jam, though. Basically, that entire game was basically done in those 48 hours, except for I think, color changes and doors. Color changers, pressure plate doors, those were pretty much the main features that weren't in the 48-hour demo that he made.
Yeah, it was a fun game jam. It wasn't like done. There was a lot of polish missing. It didn't have any, like it was definitely very playable. It was kind of like if you put the game jam demo and like the demo we showed at Gamescape, the biggest differences would be like more final art and like an actual menu. But like it was definitely playable. It was
it looked polished.
It definitely it went out to show what it could do, but it was not like production level.
Okay.
A lot of like polish and a few more features to add and stuff.
So Mike and Erica, I was wondering, given that, what drew you to HueBots?
Well, before Tad made HueBots, he made a lot of like really interesting stuff. Like the game he made the year before that was, Smash Brothers, right?
Yeah.
So basically, imagine Smash Brothers, except you have fully simulated skeletons, right?
Okay.
Like physically simulated skeletons.
Like Quack.
So like if you do a punch command, it actually triggers the muscles that actually push the fist forward. And if you want to jump, it actually triggers all the muscles all throughout the body to fully coordinate that jump that you do on your feet to actually push your character up. And on top of that, he simulated actually being able to detach parts of the skeleton. So you could punch a guy's like arm off, and his arm is like, flying like into space. And if you got hit in the spine and like your spine broke, you wouldn't actually die, but like you couldn't actually like, coordinate your guy, so you'd be flapping around like this magic carpet kind of thing. And I mean, but it wasn't like gore or anything. Like you guys played, like you basically played like a bunch of like Jack Skellington type of guys. So there was like there's no blood or anything, but just like like bullets flying around, like magic song notes flying around, and you have like bones flying all over the place. You could actually like. I remember, like if you threw your arm right when it got detached, you could hit a guy in the face with it and knock his. He just.
You could also like self-destruct. So if you're like basically a lump on the ground, and you could barely move. If someone came to finish you off, you could hit a button and self-destruct and like try to take them down with you.
That thing was really deadly too. Like if you were next to a guy when the self-destruct went off, like you were pretty much done. And so, like his ideas were always like, they were really clean. They were really, really like gameplay, were really polished, and they had a lot of like emergence to them. There were so many ways that you could really play a game that Tad made.
Simple ideas that had a lot of consequences that could flow out of them easily.
Yes. It was interesting, like no two ways you play the game really felt the same. Even like in a game like HueBots, like really like everything's deterministic. It like when you were playing it, like it felt like you could actually approach it different ways. It always felt like interesting. And that wasn't, and I mean, of course, since we're students, that's not the kind of feeling that you get in a lot of designers. So I knew beforehand, like, oh yeah, like he's an interesting designer. And then the year that he made HueBots, I was actually entering a Microsoft competition called the Imagine Cup. And we needed a compelling idea. At the time, like, we were talking with our mentor, we wanted something that wasn't, like, really violent or anything. But we also wanted something that was, like, actually interesting. We couldn't just have, like, an artsy game about the consequences of life. Or we get
You could.
So, and then Tad, like, did his game in 48 hours. Really fun puzzle game that was, like, just tricky enough to be compelling, but not so tricky that it would disinterest people who thought, like, oh, I need to be a genius to play this game. And I knew Tad pretty well. Tad was a cool guy. He was not like a huge jerk. And so I called him up and said, like, hey, do you want to maybe do this game, this competition? We can have some teriyaki chicken or whatever. And and then after that, boom, we came together as a team.
Nice. And Erica, what drew you to the project?
Oh, well, I kind of tagged along with Michael because I think initially I was brought onto Michael's team for the Microsoft competition.
Yeah.
But then the game that we were working on didn't really pan out, so we were looking to, like, get a different team. And then we found Tad's, game. And personally, I joined HueBots because I love the game. Like when I saw it, I'm like, yes, this is a playable game. I would love to play this and challenge my brain and just do all these puzzles and get angry. So I kind of jumped in because, well, I just liked the system itself because it's clean, it's simple, but it's so deceptively complex when all of the little mechanics come together. So, I mean, I just love it.
Yeah, the game might actually be like Turing complete. We don't like So we have to go off on a tangent. We have a level editor in the game, and like we gave it to some of our friends, and he was like, "Hey, I made like digital logic circuits in your game without programming anything," and we were like, "What? Like, so like theoretically, basically the point is theoretically, if we allowed you to zoom out far enough in the level editor and we like tweaked a couple things to let you make more of like the same type of objects we already have in the game, you could theoretically like build a computer in our level editor." But I mean, we have restrictions in place because that would take a lot of time and like probably melt your own computer. But I mean, just like, yeah, the gameplay is definitely very emergent. Like, you can do things in it that we didn't really expect.
That's because Tad's a good designer.
I didn't intend for this to happen. Like, you can build a computer in HueBots. That's cool. I totally didn't intend for that.
Have you heard of the guys who programmed Pong into Super Mario World?
Yes. That was, when I saw that blew my mind.
Have any of you, like, personally messed around with this stage creator, or has it mostly just been Tad creating stages?
Well, I drew a duck in it once. I'm not. Yeah, like it's funny. Like I'm pretty good at like managing, but I'm not very good at puzzles. I will make like a level or two. Like each of us made a level for the credits, but I'm definitely more of a run around and sort of like improvise kind of person. I think Erica, you made a couple levels, right?
No, I think that's Jasmine. Jasmine made some very interesting levels, for lack of better words.
Yeah, Jasmine's are pretty cool levels. Like, I was actually bugging each of them to, like, make a level. I was like, okay, I made all the levels, but, like, each of the four of us should make, like, a special credits puzzle that, like, you get at the end, where it's just, like, each of the team members made a level. Like, that's cool. And, like, Jasmine actually went on and made a few more. And, like, because we also, along with the level editor, we also have, like, a level sharing system, kind of like Little Big Planet, where you, like, make your level and then you can publish it online. And then there's, like, a browser in game you can, like, download other people's levels and play them all and stuff.
Nice.
So Jasmine was helping me test that, and she was making levels, and they're actually really... I just, like, went on one day, and I saw new levels made by her, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll try them out. And I was stuck on them for, like... One of her levels I was stuck on for like 40 minutes. Like, I was considering like messaging her and being like, is your level actually possible? But I was like, it's between that or like keeping my pride and like trying to figure it out on my own.
That's
yeah, they were possible, and I beat them, and it was awesome.
That's a little crazy to consider, like, stumping the person responsible for the game's design.
Yeah, like, it was really interesting too, because since I made all of the levels, I didn't actually have a chance to see how the game was, like, how it actually was to play. So I was never able to solve any of the puzzles since I'd already made them. So,
right, I was about to ask, like, which of you is best at the game, but then I realized, well, if you already know the solutions, that's kind of a...
Yeah, so playing Jasmine's level definitely got me hyped about releasing the game and, like, being able to play what other people create. Part of it's when the game releases, I'll finally be able to play it, too.
Nice. So, one last question, just a conceptual question I like to run by everybody individually. Mike, when it comes to game design, not necessarily HueBots, but just how you think on a more philosophical, abstract level, When it comes to game design, which is more important? The game in itself, the intention of the developer, or the experience of the player?
Well, we're trying to make money off our games. And in order to do that, you need customers. And as I always used to say, as my peepaw always used to say, that customer's always right. So, in my opinion, yeah, like, when we're making games for sale like we are now, like, it has to be the customer experience. That's pretty much it. Like, that's the final arbiter. Although, like, we think really hard about, like, oh, like, what's our vision? Like, how do we want people to see this? But in the end, people will play and they'll say, like, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it. And if they did like it, like, yeah, we need to work more like that. If they didn't like it, we have to listen to what they say. Otherwise, like, why are we selling it? We should, make it for free and release it if we don't want to listen to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Erica, when it comes to game design, which is more important?
I'm kind of on the same vein, but more so because I like playing games. So someone else, the player, also likes playing games. So if I was the player, I'd want a game that is fun and I enjoy. So the player experience is definitely, I think, the most important. Although, I like game mechanics that are practical. So if that can tie into the user experience, then that's probably the best.
How do you mean practical?
Like where the game itself plays, like even if it was, say, like a text game. If it was a text game with like no visuals, no nothing, and it still played as an interesting game mechanic, I think that would be like great. Because you can build off of that.
Huh.
And that's where you get into like user experience.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. Okay. And Tad, when it comes to game design, which is more important?
So you said the idea, the developer's intentions, or the user experience?
Or the game in itself, but yeah.
Yeah, the game. So, they all kind of go hand in hand. Like when you're making the game, you're making what you want to make. So that's kind of like the game itself and the developer's intentions. But like Michael and Erica said, user feedback is king. So the developer's intentions, if you want people to be feeling or like having a certain experience, then it's your job to design the game around that and make sure that when people play it, they're getting that experience, if that makes sense. So if you're like watching people play your game and they're doing it completely wrong, then that's kind of your fault as the designer. Like but if they're enjoying it, then it's kind of up to you whether to change the game to like match your intentions, but also possibly make it less fun, or to just keep it the way it is and kind of keep them happy. So they all kind of go hand in hand.
So let me flip that on its head. When you play a game, do you ever think about what the developer intended? Am I playing it their way?
I actually have gotten to the point where like I'm also a speedrunner, so I like to think outside the box when I'm playing games. Like, I could totally, like, skip this cutscene or something, or, like, I could, like, sequence break or whatever. But usually the first time I'm playing games, I actually like to keep in mind what the developer is intending. Like, I can usually try to predict what they're intending for me to do, because I'm assuming that's the best experience I'm going to get. If I kind of follow what they're trying to make me do, then I feel like that's definitely going to allow me to enjoy the game more, because as a developer, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, if I'm trying to get the player to do something, then that's probably for a good reason. So when I'm playing games, I like to try to think from a developer mindset and see what they're trying to like egg me on to do.
Yeah, just in a practical sense, going off the beaten path, the developer will have less money to spend on QA, so you're more likely to get into sticky situations that way.
Yeah, right. Like, I try to avoid those until the second playthrough, then it's just like, I want to break this game.
It's brutal.
All right, well, thank you for joining me to talk about HueBots. Is there anything you guys wanted to bring up?
I can't think of anything. guys have any questions?
We have a green light.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
We're on Steam Greenlight. Yeah.
okay.
Absolutely, yes. That's definitely one thing. We have a green light currently up under HueBots, of course. And
HueBots.com.
HueBots, HueBots, or HueBots, or
As
HueBots.
some people call it.
Everyone has one way of pronouncing it, but HueBots. And if you guys would want to vote yes, that would be really awesome for us. This is the first game, I think, that's come out of UMBC's Games Developers Club as a commercial game.
Oh,
So,
nice.
very excited about that.
Glad to hear.
Very thankful for your time. So, thank you.
So that interview brought us back to questions raised by the Adventures of Lolo podcast, where we mulled over the role of planning in puzzle solving. That was back in episode 24. Thanks for listening. Next time, 2 interviews with games inspired by the real world. One is a fun multiplayer game, while the other takes place inside of your body. See you then. If you have any comments or questions, please email vgcommune@gmail.com.